I have a question. Can I change my vote at this time? On the vice chair to abstain.
I don't believe we generally do that, but if you want to place it on the record, you certainly can.
I'd like to place that on the record with apologies to my friend, Miss Murphy.
Did everybody have a chance to see the minutes that were distributed through email?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
If anybody would like to make a motion to approve,
I move we approve the minutes as presented.
thank you, Chuck. Any,
Move them as amended,
are they amended?
because Dan's changing his vote.
Right. Okay, so you don't amend minutes to reflect something that didn't happen. We enter the amendment of the vote to these minutes.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, do we have a second? Thank you. I'm going to ask, I think, Pat, you asked for this next time. When somebody seconds, if you can also speak so that if she's looking at her keyboard, she can catch the second.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, any discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes as distributed? All opposed? Abstaining? Thank you very much. The minutes are approved. So this applies a little bit less to this particular meeting, but I like to ask if there are issues from members that may be necessary to a particular meeting. And so if there are any issues that people want to have added to the agenda or suggestions for changes to the agenda this evening, you're certainly welcome to put them forward. Anybody have things they would like to do to the agenda this evening? If it's not practical, we may not do it, but it's certainly worth asking. Okay, great. So welcome to another budget year. I'm not anywhere as good as Chuck at opening statements. I had some thoughts of Chuck asking you to do the opening statement simply because you would do a far better job. But I'm looking forward much to this year. I think we have a wonderful group. We have all of our seats filled. This is unusual. More often than not, at this point, we're looking for somebody from one seat or another. But at this point, we have it filled, and I believe we have no fully new members. We have people who have at least experience with some piece of this at this time. We're going to do some policy and training pieces tonight, but nothing that should take too long, specifically because we don't have a large number of people who need thorough training on it. So the first piece, I wanted to show you something that I think will be helpful to us this year. If you look in your packets, you'll see a page that is titled Unified Language Budget Process. Over the last few years, a number of our members and chairs have worked to help us clarify our role in the process of creating the budget. And in some ways it has gone well. In other ways, there has been confusion resulting from that, from people not understanding what the attempt was trying to do. This is my approach to managing it. My understanding is as follows. We have tended in the past to refer to the entire budget process by one term, the budget. And that means that at any given moment in time, people could be talking about entirely different documents and speaking at cross purposes in terms of who, quote unquote, owns or authors different parts. And so this is clarity in terms of how this works and what I'm suggesting we call these pieces of the budget. I have had an opportunity to talk with administration, and it looks sensible from that perspective as well. And here's how this works. Early in the process, the district personnel bring forward their site-based budget requests and provide them to administration. Administration creates their initial or draft budget request. That's the budget book, the binder. That goes to the board. The board authors a budget request. That is their document. They write it, they format it, they do what they like with it, they own it. They give it to us. We use the budget request and any other documents we choose to craft a budget proposal or proposed budget. That is the document that we author and we control. That document goes to deliberative session where it is finalized and put forward to the voters. I'd be interested in thoughts on this possible way of moving forward. Yes.
I like it. I think it's really clear and breaks down not only the pieces of the process, but the moving parts and how it moves through the hands and the audiences that help with the crafting. So I think it's great to use these terms. It's mindful.
Thank you.
Similarly, I was going to say that, it not only identifies the term for which budget we're talking about, but the owners as well.
Yes.
So I think the lack of clarity could be confusing not only to us, but to the public in the past.
Yes.
This was well thought out, and thank you.
Any suggestions to differences in the wording? Or does this seem like a useful one going forward? Great. Then let's use this and adopt this. Chuck.
We have worked very hard to fulfill our responsibilities under the New Hampshire budget law. And there has been misunderstanding, there has been miscommunication, there has been confusion, and I applaud this attempt at clarifying things somewhat. But at the same time, we haven't heard anything from our school board liaison. And I think now would be the best time to delve into whether or not there is an acceptance and a buy-in relative to what the budget procedure is, so that we don't wind up like we did at last year's school district annual meeting, where we had a number of people significantly cut the budget, saying that, well, that's what the school board wanted. And I don't know that that's what the school board wanted, but it certainly wasn't what the budget committee wanted. And so if we're going to have a clarification in procedures, I'd like to have an honest give and take with our representative from the school board about adjudicating once and for all how the budget is developed and whose responsibility is what. I think it's important that we have that honest conversation.
I am not at my best tonight. So, I think to really have a conversation like that, I would need to take the question back to the board and get consensus there about what the school board as a body thinks of that. Because I can talk about what I think of that, but I haven't posed this direct question to the board as a whole, so I'm not sure I can speak for them tonight, especially because I'm not on the top of my game.
Well, we're more than happy to hear your thoughts on it.
Yes. We are very happy to hear your thoughts, but if what you're saying is that you wish to wait until you can consult the board, that is also something that you're certainly welcome to do. Shane.
I just have a question because I don't know the answer. I was under the impression it isn't like an opinion or something. I thought it was a defined role.
Okay, so here's the thing.
Or maybe that's the question we're discussing.
This is accurate to RSA. It's accurate to process. It's moved through elements, including I'm looking forward to the full school board having a chance to talk about it. I know that elements of the school board have had a chance through administration otherwise to have some say in this. It's not unilateral. My goal is to create something that's accurate, but that is accepted across the three bodies so that we're not in argument about it. So this is it. No, we're talking about the unified terms.
Are we just talking about the words we're using right now?
The words and the process are intertwined in that the budget, the main thing that's happened for us is that the question of the phrase that's come up is who owns the budget. My opinion, as I've learned to put it, is that nobody owns the budget. It's not a puppy. It's a document. It's a document that goes through phases that different people work on. And each group owns that phase, owns that piece. And so we are tasked by RSA to propose a budget to the voters. We are required to do that whether or not the school board gives us a budget request. And so in that way, we are autonomous entirely from that. That said, the RSAs also indicate, and I agree, that our goal in crafting that budget is to create something that reflects policy and process within the board. So we're intended to create something that reflects the goals and intent of the school board. Now, this is the language. It works. It follows the RSA. But I will hedge and say that I think that unity on this is important for our bodies working together as well. So I have no problem with it going back in that way.
And to further clarify, Chuck, you're saying that during the deliberative session the end of last season, the changes that were made during that session should not have been changed during that session. Is that what I'm just trying to clarify?
Well, the voters have the right to do anything they want.
Yeah.
They can change whatever they wish at the meeting. But that specific change for 250,000 was provided evidentially as something that the school board wanted. And if that was the budget that the school board wanted, then that was justification to cut that amount of money. And so it's really by the time we get to the annual district meeting, it's not about what the school board wants anymore. It's about the proposal that has been developed and authorized for consideration by the budget committee for the annual district meeting.
Understood.
So in trying to eliminate the initial, or historic for that matter, conflict. I mean, I'll be very honest. I mean, I know time goes by very quickly, but the first year that I was the chairman, the school district would not allow me to hold a budget committee meeting on school district property. They refused to hear me. They refused to let me appeal to the board. They refused to have anything to do with me. And of course, I was the representative of the budget committee. That's how far apart that conflict had come at that time. And I've been doing everything I can while I was chairman to advance the correct procedural undertakings to ameliorate or eliminate any misunderstanding about whose budget it is. And so I certainly hope that the administration, when they propose a budget to the school board, that they will have a reasonably good idea of what the school board might like to see in that proposed budget. But at the same time, that proposed budget that the school board gets is the same proposed budget that we get.
Chuck, I'm going to break in and suggest that you use these terms. It's a budget request now from them, and the budget proposal is ours.
Well, I was just speaking to
I know, just for the clarity of
the
it.
historic conflict. I'd be happy to subscribe to these present terms. But I was just trying to give some history. I am not the chairman of the budget committee anymore. Thank you. I am very happy to be here as one of your fellow members, so.
And I have no intent to police these terms. The reason I mentioned it, and apologies for that interruption, was the beginning of a confusion of calling what the district is bringing forward a budget proposal while we're trying to shift that theirs is a budget request. And so that's why I mentioned that.
If I could, my only dog in this hunt is to make sure that the school board and the budget committee are on the same pages relative to what their responsibilities are, because the conflicts that we've had over the last 15 years have been very distracting to the business that we should have been undertaking. And we have turned a corner. We're moving forward. And I think everybody's on the same page. And so we're just trying, I think, to put that old argument aside and work for what's best for the district.
And I agree with that. The one thing I can say with authority is that everyone on the board wants the process to go smoothly and for everyone to be working together, because our goal is the betterment of the district at this point. Whether or not we agree on the particulars is a whole nother question, but I apologize, I just lost my train of thought. But yes, which is why, again, I don't want to speak for the board when it's not something we've discussed. So, but I can't imagine that the goal is going to be anything other than coming to an agreement between all parties so that we can work well together going forward, because that obviously is best for the district.
Is that something that you could bring back to the next meeting?
Absolutely.
Wonderful, thank you. Jennifer?
And again, I do like the terms because I do think that they really articulate that each of the authors on the left-hand side of the page is a stakeholder in the total budget, and they have a different perspective than the others in the list. And so each one is bringing a set of requests based on what their needs are. And we, as a budget committee, are taking into account the requests that are made by district personnel, administration, and the school board, and sort of collating that, but also helping to find the common ground and what is best for the district. And so I really do like how it's laid out. 3 groups are making requests, then we are making a proposal incorporating their requests, and then we're taking it to the citizens of the town to review and vote on before we finalize it.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Okay, we will await conversation next time, and in the meantime, this is the language I will be trying to use as we go forward. The next document that you have is the proposed meeting schedule for the year. You will notice that it's a little complex, so let me walk us through it. The goal is to meet once a month through the autumn in order to do preparatory work of the type that we're doing tonight, to have an opportunity for Matt Chevenel to come before us and have ample time to discuss the past year, the way the budget has gone, things that he would like us to know, and for us to discuss with him what other alternative and additional materials we may be asking him to provide, which was one thing that members asked for at the end of last year. The December meeting at the moment, the plan is to invite the school board in addition to administration, and so our liaison would have some friends at the table that day to provide us with clear guidance in terms of their strategic plan, their goals, and the things that they are using to shape the budget, so that we move into this with a strong understanding of the priorities. I think another thing that has happened occasionally is we've moved into discussions of the budget without having a really strong idea of why certain things happen in the budget and not others, and this may give us a chance to begin to fix that. The weekly meetings begin in January as we're moving up. That's more typical as we've done in the high season. The thing that's a bit strange here is that there's going to be a presidential primary at some point. Pat, would you like to explain the way that this works? Are you comfortable doing that?
All right. We meet on Tuesdays, and the presidential primary is on Tuesday at some point. So it's probably not a good idea to try to have custodians and everybody and the budget committee here working. And the fact is, I will be all day at the primary anyway. And some of you may be. And we don't know what's going to happen that day. But the big problem was, what day is it? And they're not even going to announce it until after the presidential filing period is over. I looked at the calendar. We have scheduled all of the 5 Tuesdays as a possible meeting, and we're just going to cancel the week of the presidential primary. We talked about, well, maybe we could have it on Wednesday, or maybe we could have it on Thursday, and it just seems like after all the confusion of a presidential primary here in New Hampshire and the people that are out there, it's probably better to just take a break that week.
Thank you. So we essentially have 4 planned agendas and 5 possible meeting dates, one of which will drop once we know when the primary is going to be held.
And if I may, the only other thing I'll add is that the back page
Yes.
is 4 planned agendas.
Yes.
And Naomi decided as chair that she wanted to make the reviews so that people didn't have to sit so long. So you'll notice in the years past, we've had 2 weeks for reviews, and she is scheduling 4 weeks for review. And it is my understanding at this point that the school board is supposed to have finished the budget before in December. Matt keeps talking about the budget being finished in December.
But we know that you can't predict the future on that one.
Well, and they may have talked about it last night, but I missed the meeting last night and haven't had a chance to watch it yet, so I'm not sure what's up with that.
My hope as well is to make slightly shorter meetings. I know that and I like the fact that we meet until we're done, but I think that many people here have families and responsibilities waiting at home. And so spreading out a little bit more may help in that regard as well. We have the warrant article review and work session, which are standard. We have the petition warrant hearing, which is again standard, and then in March we meet after the deliberative session. So are there any thoughts on this as our calendar for the year? Okay, I'm not going to make it an official motion in that regard, but it sounds like it works for folks, so we're going to call
Silence is always a sign of acquiescence.
Indeed.
And just
There we go.
and just FYI, these are all still going to be at 7 p.m., right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And further, as an FYI, 2 of them are on, or 2 of those January meetings are on a Wednesday, because
Yes.
there is, usually the school board meets on the 1st and 3rd Monday, and January 1st is Monday, and January 15th is another holiday, and usually the school board meets on Tuesday of that week.
Yes.
And if there is an election on that week on the Tuesday, then the school board is going to have to change. And this was really hard to put this all together and figure out. So that's why the week of the primary, we're just going to cancel, because we don't know what the school board's going to do, and I couldn't tell them what to do. So
Excellent.
works for me, and I'll be there.
And technically, I mean, in theory, there's no reason we couldn't be cross-scheduled with the school board, but it seems to me counterproductive, because it means that they can't attend if they wish. It means the liaison has to be figured out. It just doesn't seem collegial to act in that way when we can act otherwise. Yeah. Okay, onward. Next thing in your packet is the summary of key policies and procedures. You had a similar document when we met for reorg. It has grown a bit, as such documents usually do. And we should probably walk through briefly some of the main points. The first part is a reiteration of our meetings. It includes giving out the dates, which we did earlier this summer, and giving them now. It reminds us that the quorum is 7 members for this particular body. We have an RSA that shows, or rather tells us, when attendance or non-attendance becomes an issue from a legal perspective in holding this particular elected position. And we have a policy that we have passed. We passed it last January to not allow remote participation by members. That is our policy at the moment, which means that if there were desire, I support it. I proposed it. But if there were a desire to discuss it or change it, then that's something we can do at any time because it's our choice to do that. I'd like to ask that if you'd like to be excused, if you send an email when I no longer have email because I'm here trying to set up the meeting, then that won't be helpful. So as much early warning that you can give me, the better. Any thoughts or questions on these first two? Okay. Generally, we hold our votes by voice or show of hands. We have had a standing practice, again, this is our choice, to have roll call votes for specific things, including the approval of the not finalized, that's the thing, but the proposed budget when we're ready to pass it along, and when we're voting to fill positions or nominate officers. Yes, I skipped the one where it says for warrant article recommendations as well. In addition to that, I wanted to make sure everybody was aware that you can call for roll call votes at any point that you'd like. If you'd like everybody to put their vote on the record, any of you can request that for any vote. There is no requirement that we hold public comment in the RSAs, but we have always had the practice of doing so, and it is my hope that we will continue. It is my hope that we will continue doing it in the two-piece, so we have it at the beginning and the end. We've occasionally had discussions about adding other ways for people to participate in public comment, which would be delightful. However, we're not live, or we're not consistently live. We are recorded and posted that way, and it is not feasible to provide equitable access when it's not live. And so I think that we are locked into this form of public comment at this time. That said, any member of the public can email us anytime they like. They have other avenues to communicate with us, but comment at sessions, I cannot think of any way that we can have it other than in person at this time. Thoughts on that particular piece? Jennifer.
I do like the spirit of opening it up wherever possible to public participation. I think that it's great for folks in the community to hear about, you know, what we're considering and be a part of the process. So I think we should look for opportunities wherever possible to allow that, given the circumstances.
Absolutely. And if anybody has ideas of ways that that might work, please don't hesitate to bring them forward, really at any time. Okay, number 5, correspondence. We do not make personal email addresses available to the public, but we do have a unified email address. I have the, I did not put the email address itself there because it's a better practice to give one shared thing such as a website, and anything else that changes there instead of having documents that go out of date. And so the email address can be found there. I or someone currently, the practice that I have inherited is that I or someone I designate answer emails that go to that account, and then I provide a copy of that correspondence to other committee members. I think it's simplest to continue that, although it can certainly be reconsidered at need. At the moment, the designation by the chair is that I have asked, and I think this has been a standing thing, that junk mail, spam, easily answered, procedural pieces and things of that sort are answered directly. That, Pat, you answer them directly rather than necessarily send them to me unless, you send them to me regardless, but for that piece. Is there anybody here who wants to be part of the immediate answering email loop? Just checking, you never know.
I'll help you next year, but right now I answer 3.
Fair. Okay, the last one is member conduct. This is an interesting one because there are several things that come under conduct for this particular committee. The biggest one, and the one that comes up most often, is the right to know laws, public access. We are an elected body, and therefore we fall under certain RSAs that guide what parts of our activities as an elected body must be open to the public, recorded, or made accessible in a variety of ways. The last thing in your packet is some pieces of that. I encourage everybody to read the full RSA. I'm going to highlight bits of it, but it is easily found online and is probably something you should be familiar with.
Yeah, I'm going to object under RSA 91 with the statement that I personally have not met on public business with any member of this committee at any time except in these public forums.
Could you clarify what you're objecting to, please?
I'm objecting to discussing this, which, if we go further, this is generated by emails that you and I have shared. And I'd suggest that maybe those should be shared to everyone on the committee and the public so that transparently they'll see what's going on. The other thing that is not connected to that, but is connected to this, is there's actually a statement above what you have here. And that statement is, meetings of public body members that are less than a quorum to discuss public business should not be undertaken. All public business should only be discussed at properly convened public meetings. And that's what my objection is. I want it understood that I have not met with anybody outside of this committee in these basic meetings.
So is that an objection, or is that something you would like placed in the record?
It's both.
I'm sorry, I'm not meaning to push it, but I'm not sure what you're objecting to.
I'm objecting to a discussion of this without the background of what has generated that discussion.
Would you like me to summarize it?
Sure.
Okay. This is something we do every year in some form. We talk about the right to know laws and pieces. After the appointment or election took place at the last meeting, I received an email from Dan Coakley suggesting or informing me that there were irregularities or things that he believed were irregularities in public meetings, or rather private meetings taking place that he believed should be public. We have an email exchange on that is rather prolific, that could be shared if people wish to see it, I suppose. It included, shall I give the full? I have no problem with it.
I have no problem with that.
It included the suggestion that the nomination and choice of chair itself had been preordained in some way, or that conversations had taken place with all members but one. Yes.
Might it help if I read what I wrote you?
You are certainly welcome to do that, but if you begin that now, we have to read back and forth the entire 20 email exchange in order to put it in
But those
context.
will be provided to everybody?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes.
And then
Yes.
any other conversations between you on this matter should also be included in that?
Some conversations that I have with others are in the public domain, some are not. Right to Know does not cover all conversations between separate individuals or two individuals. I'm happy to make transparent anything people wish, but I think it is very clear to make clear what is under Right to Know and what is not. Right to Know is a specific piece.
Well, I should point out that it says all public business should only be discussed at properly convened public meetings.
May I
So
suggest
any-
that we read it together before we debate it? Okay? How about if we look at the RSA before we begin arguing about it? I'm actually asking you if that's okay with you.
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
I'm very open.
So do we have what you wanted in the record before I proceed?
As long as all the communication between you and I on, that generated this matter are there and made public, yes.
Okay.
And then you may also want to ask Merrimack TV if they have copies of both of those meetings that I discussed.
Which meetings?
The Carol Lang meeting and the chair and vice chair meetings.
I don't know what you mean by that.
If they have those meetings archived, can they provide them for the public so the public can decide whether the reactions that I saw were there or not?
What meetings?
The Carol Lang meeting and the chair and vice chair meeting, the very last meeting,
Those do not exist.
okay? You know that without asking public television.
Unless there was a meeting of which I am unaware. Yes, Pat.
Are you referring to the meeting where the elected chair and the vice chair that was recorded that you just approved?
The public meetings?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
those are public meetings.
Yeah, but.
Yeah,
okay.
they're on YouTube.
So if they have those and we can provide those, then people can look at what happened. and
Those have
see.
been on YouTube since they were recorded. I don't know.
It is. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. fine.
Okay, let's talk it through. Now, I do want to clarify one thing. I am more than happy to enter that correspondence into the record. I think it's important since it is important to you. These are not documents that would necessarily otherwise fall under right to know, but I am happy to place them there in order to help clarify this.
I think the public can never see the transparency of this unless those are made public.
That's fine with me. Okay, shall we read?
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so the RSAs talk about a specific piece, and that is they define public meetings. When we convene together, we're doing something called a public meeting. We'll look at the criteria for that in a moment on the next page. But the indication is that when we are acting in public in our official capacity, that's what the public meeting is intended and the criteria is intended to show. When we are acting in our public capacity, those meetings need to be open, and there are other requirements in order to allow the public access to them. Now, if you look on the next page, actually pause on this one for a moment. I want to say on this one as well, there is the spirit and purpose. And so if there are loopholes that somebody finds in order to make private what should have been public, even if it meets the letter of the RSA, if it does not meet the spirit, then that is also problematic. So that's worth keeping in mind. So if we turn this page, in the first part, I've highlighted 3 pieces. A meeting has the following 3 criteria. These are the 3 things that must exist in order for a meeting to need to be posted and available to the public. First, there needs to be a quorum. So a quorum of this body is 7. Second, it needs to be a gathering where people are communicating what is called contemporaneously, otherwise known as people can speak to each other back and forth. That includes electronic forms, and that includes mass emails where people are shooting them back and forth in conversation as well. Okay? Third, the conversation of this quorum that is contemporaneous must be conducting or discussing matters that we have supervision or jurisdiction over. Those 3 things together must exist. It's not an or, it's an and. So, when there is a quorum gathered, contemporaneously or its equivalent, and we are conducting business, those need to be open to and available to the public. Okay? Now, there are many things that do not fall under this. And I think it's important that we recognize those as well. This is partly where the experience of the summer helps inform my perspective on this. I think it is important that people not be made to feel that they are doing something wrong when they talk in a way that does not meet this definition. By being elected to a public body, you do not give up your rights to free speech or association. You can speak with each other whenever you like, on whatever you like. What you cannot do is gather in this manner to conduct business. And so, if there are individuals who feel that one-to-one conversations are in some way problematic, they are not under this RSA. There is only one place where they can be problematic, and that is if there is intentional daisy chaining to create a tree to tell everybody the same thing, but it's only one-to-one as it goes around. That would be circumventing the spirit of it, pieces of that kind. So for example, if I told Lee, we're doing this, pass it down, and he called the next person and passed it down, and it went around that way, then that would become deeply problematic. However, if I or anybody else wishes to call somebody and say, what are your thoughts about this? I'm curious. That is a conversation, did you get it?
No, you missed it.
Between 2 people. You may have your own ethical guidelines that are personal to yourselves. My own say that I don't talk to more than 2 or 3, just because I think it begins to get into interesting territory. So that's what I do. Within my own personal guidelines are also that I will certainly collaborate with another person to, for example, author a motion. I may talk with somebody else that we can bring that together in some form. Talk to a member who is going to be deeply personally affected by something that may or may not happen to help them emotionally understand it. None of those are conducting business as a quorum or as a body. And so what you will want to do is think about what actions of your own fall under the law piece, what pieces are important to you ethically, personally, and where that belongs. Yes, sir.
I would question that definition based on this. It says meetings of public body members that are less than a quorum to discuss public business, or I've heard it said, things that would be voted on, should not be undertaken. All public business should only be discussed at properly convened public meetings.
Where are you reading from, please?
This is above,
That's what I'm trying to find. I can't find it online.
Yes.
yeah, well, it's.
Tell me if I'm
Where
sorry,
is it?
can you tell me the number, where to find it in the document?
You'll find it in the presentation of the master RTK law meetings.
That's
And it's,
an opinion.
this is off a slide that was there.
That is an opinion, sir. That
That's
is
an
not part of the
opinion. That's
RSA.
not the RSA.
Well, this
That's why
was,
I can't
this
find
was
it.
presented by attorneys for the National, whatever it is, New Hampshire Municipal Association. Okay?
That's
So-
why you can't find it. It's actually, the language is not in the RSA.
Yes. In that particular webinar, which I attended as well, they absolutely took a position where they recommended that people be deeply careful in order to avoid stepping near a line where they might be considered to be acting a way that was improper. However, what they were suggesting to take as your line to avoid that is more conservative than the RSA states.
No.
Any thoughts or questions, conversation on this RSA or things around it? This is an important responsibility, folks. The things that need to be public need to be public. But it also needs to not constrain us from being active citizens and people in our own right. You may not act as a body, you may not act as a member of this body in certain specific ways, and those are outlined in this particular RSA. Make sense? Would you like to add anything to that?
No, I feel objectively, if this was presented and presented by
Yep.
the people here, that we should attend this meeting, and this is there, right above what is here. And it sort of says different than what you've just presented, then there's a question here for me. And you're saying this is not in the RSA. Well, this was in the presentation that these attorneys
Sure it
gave
was.
to all of us.
Yeah.
And if it says meetings of public body members that are less than a quorum to discuss public business or voting issues should not be undertaken. So you can't talk to somebody else about something that's going to be voted on, is what I'm reading into it.
You are
And-
reading that there are lawyers who told you it's a bad idea. And that is certainly something that happened and that you're welcome to agree with them on. Whether or not that is part of the RSA, I am presenting the RSA. I hear and respect that you feel that a more conservative position is beneficial.
Okay. I'm not convinced and will agree to disagree.
Can I offer another document for you to read?
Sure.
Which is that on the State Attorney General's office, on that website, there is the Attorney General of the State of New Hampshire legal opinion on RSA 91.
Yeah.
And it offers the Attorney General's opinion, and it's very clear what his opinion is on how you should proceed. And you're gonna see that that language is very similar to what the Municipal Association did. But it's not the
Yes.
law, it's an opinion.
So fast.
I am
No,
going to
just-
say this for the voting public so that they understand they are trying to kill a bug.
And we're very, very disappointed in Shane's
That was not a comment on the
And I
conversation. That was an attempt at the life of a bug. Yes.
And I apologize, Naomi, but the fact is, the Attorney General's opinion hasn't been updated in a while. But on there, a lot of as a member of other committees, every year we pull out the Attorney General to see what was changed and what's in it. And but it's very clear that it's his opinion on how you should proceed.
Yes.
And that may help you figure out, because the fact is, if there's a problem, it goes to court. And I've had the pleasure of attending 2 right-to-know hearings in court. It's
Now,
one we won, one we lost.
that said, there's one last highlight on the reverse page 2A, that I thought might come in handy. If people did have concerns, it's nice to know how to follow up on them. If you find yourself in a situation that you feel should be a public meeting and is not, What the RSA indicates that you should do is object to the discussion. You can then discuss that objection. If it does not resolve to your satisfaction, you can place your objection in the minutes. And if you do that, then you are protected from violation of that RSA, even if the discussion continues. Okay, so if you find yourself in that situation, then that is the formal course of action that the RSA indicates that you should take. You're also free to walk away, of course. Anybody can from any discussion, but that piece. Good? That's your whole packet. How are we doing for time? Oh, not bad. Under an hour at the moment. Yes, sir.
I would like to say that I appreciate Dan's stand-up disposition about public meetings. And while some of us may be a little bit more familiar with what the actual statutes are, erring on the side of caution certainly isn't an unwelcome thing. We should all be very cautious about trying to manipulate fellow members of the committee. I'd like to assure all of you that I have never participated in that kind of manipulation. And I would apologize for it if I had. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being a stand-up guy, Dan.
Thank you.
I agree. I also agree that regardless of outcomes, it's important to we hold lines for each other as a group and have these discussions. Absolutely. Jennifer.
So, sort of along the same lines, you know, I was thinking as we were talking about whether this committee could sort of make a commitment to one another that we would not, you know, engage in such gray area situations that it causes anyone to question anyone's motives. So in absence of a formal motion to do so, I will say that, you know, I will make a commitment to the committee to be more conservative than liberal when it comes to right to know and what is a quorum and conversations about this type of business.
Seeing nothing else. Last look around just to make sure I'm not missing anybody. I think that we are ready to move on to the next meeting date and our adjourning items. Okay, our next meeting is on November 14th, same place, same time, at which time we will have the opportunity to hear about the past year of financials and other such details from Matt Chavanel. I would suggest that you also bring at that time any thoughts towards other materials that you may have had in mind. I am going to, at that time, suggest and talk about the fact that we really are not, it would not behoove us to give him a list of things that infringes on his ability to do his job because we're asking him for 50,000 new documents. But if we give him a sense of what we want and need in November, he will likely be able to come up with good ways to provide that he knows he can for the subsequent meetings. So it's a brainstorming piece to bring the ideas of what you'd like that you may or may not have seen in the past. Public participation, we will open it, note that the public is happily at home, and close it again. Are there any other comments from the committee, please? Chuck.
I want to make the committee members aware, if they are not, that we in the school district hired a director of Pathways to Graduation and Adult Education.
Yes.
And there is a separate website for the director, Expanded Learning Opportunities. and it's very exciting. We have not really been engaged in ELOs prior to this, and it's a big step forward. Every student should be able to apply and receive an affirmation of an extended learning opportunity. So we hope it's going to be a widespread program in the school district. And while we found some money in last year's budget to hire this individual and get started, we will have to consider in the proposed budget this year an expanded look at the cost of the position relative to particularly the stipend amounts that would be necessary. If we've just got a few students, of course, a stipend can be found very easily. But if we have a number of students engaged in this, which we expect will be the case, then we need to seriously look at funding the stipends and some other ancillary resources that would be associated with it. And if anybody has anybody in high school, I certainly would recommend that you look into getting an extended learning opportunity that would provide additional credit and an off-campus real-world experience for your child.
Yes, Naomi.
I wanted to say in terms of funding for that, we applied for and received a small grant, and that comes up every 3 years. And Lori Rothaus and Harley Hall, the director of Pathways to Graduation, worked together on applying for that, and we are likely to, I can't say we will because grants are grants, but one of the reasons it was a smaller amount was because it was a new program starting up and we didn't have a lot of evidence of like who was going to be utilizing it and that kind of thing. So if it's something that we can grow, we're likely to get more grant money. And it was one of the priorities of the school board was that providing alternate routes to graduation and alternate options for students to be able to get credit for things that we might not necessarily offer at the high school. Again, I'm not 100% today, so we had our annual goal setting meeting back in June, and we expanded on a bunch of the goals that we put into place last year, and I think probably we'll talk more about that at a future meeting. But one of the things we put as a goal was moving the master plan forward and getting the SAU building built, or at least put before the voters. So that's definitely on the agenda for this year. And we also have some contract negotiations going on with the MESA support staff contract. And a huge priority is to make sure that that also passes on the ballot, because it's really important that our support staff, that we're able to attract and retain good support staff. We did that over the last couple of years with the teacher contract. And one of our big goals this year is making sure that, I meant to ask Matt before this meeting how many open para positions we have right now, but it's more than a few, and we need to fix that.
Thank you.
So my comment was actually going to be a follow-up from last month's meeting where I think it was mentioned that we would review the goals from last year, or they would be distributed or something. I'm not sure if I didn't receive those or if I did and I overlooked them, but maybe there are new goals for this year that we should also review.
I was sent a copy, and it was so close to the revision to new goals that it seemed more confusing than not to distribute it. But I can certainly distribute it along with the new materials if they are. Yes.
The new one should be on the website, and I can send it to you.
It is on the
Yeah.
website. Okay, excellent.
Yes.
Thank you.
Chuck.
Well, I'd just like to remind everybody that we're trying very hard to change the culture of how we approach development in our school district. It's always nice to see a grant from somebody. But what a grant is, and always has been, is an attempt to get somebody to do something that they should be doing that they haven't previously done for whatever financial and support reasons they may have relied upon. And we're trying to move the school district forward in a way that we enjoy the multiplicity of all the things that are well known to be had in education and have beneficial outcomes. And so while we're playing catch up in lots of different ways, normally you would fund a program. We have always been somewhat parsimonious in that we tend to rely on grants as funding, which is not what grants are. Grants are, again, an attempt to get a school district to adopt practices in education that they ought to be and have not for whatever financial reasons. But as ours is the financial responsibility, being the budget committee for the school district, I think it's time for us to largely set aside the idea that we can operate a school district on grants.
Thank you. Any other comments from committee members? Jennifer?
Could we think of a grant as an opportunity for experimentation? It's a funding that might be available to us to start a new program or to launch a new program, see how that program does, and if it's something that the group, whether it's the district or whomever makes the budget requests, whether they want to complete or finish that initiative or that program. So thinking of it less as like using grant money to fund our budget, and think of it more as using grant money to launch new initiatives as an experimentation. And if they do well, we continue to invest in them from money that is within the budget. Or if they don't do well, then we've not used money, in vain, I guess.
Thank you. Any other comments, either on that or on any other topic? In this case, I think that we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay, we are adjourned.
Thanks, Lee.
Do we need to vote on the adjournment, or do we need to say all in favor on that? Did I skip that? Pat,
I can certainly say that the chair declared the meeting adjourned.
I am
or you can
declaring
vote.
the meeting adjourned.
Lee's
That's
got
what I
my back
usually
again. I like that.